This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 6, a special edition for the 8800 XT news that just dropped today. And I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and you are...
Turbo Penguin.
Turbo Penguin. Yeah, let's kick it off. So we've got some driver updates to start off the show, as usual. Looks like NVIDIA gave us some fun stuff.
Yep. 2 days ago, August. So new NVIDIA graphics drivers. So, that will be a popular one. So run out and grab those. I've already updated this family suite of computers. So
get on those game-ready drivers because it's usually helpful. So,
and speaking of graphics, let's just jump right in. So, it's really interesting, Moose. We were talking about this on Navi 48. Now, Navi 48, if we look at prior, was really unique. And the rumors were there were two versions of Navi 48, a big and a little, and it was supposed to be like enthusiast grade and then more mainstream. And somewhere in there, it kind of got melded down to one. And so the one that won was obviously the more value portion of it. What we're really hearing is that now all of a sudden we've got, and we kind of thought they were going to come out really this year or next. I mean, there was really kind of up in the air. There wasn't a ton. And then all of a sudden we started seeing a good chunk of conversations about this is going to come and it's going to come fast. And so we've got, there's enough rumors running out there that we just kind of want to get ahead of, what does this look like and what if? So the rumors look like, that we had before were somewhere between a 7900 XT, but not as fast as an XTX.
Now that's on rasterization front, right?
Just in general, that was kind of the notion of what we were hearing is somewhere between those two. But the notion with this, the Navi 48 was it was going to be very value oriented and something that AMD has really kind of been its bread and butter. It has really struggled in the high end enthusiast, but once you get into the the value gamer or the value GPUs, AMD really owns that space. When you look at the 7800 XT, the 7900 GRE, like you look at this, sub $600 price range, and they really do really well there from a market and a sales perspective. In fact, for the longest time, I want to think it was like the 67 and the 7700X XT models were the number one selling graphics cards for quite some time, and I still think that they are still in that realm because it's cheaper than a 4060, but you get a lot of performance maybe above that. And so what we're really talking now is we're starting to get some real talking points on the Navi 48 that it's going to be well, hold up. Let's going back to rumors. About a month ago, there was talk, and we didn't cover this mainly because we talked too much. But true. there was talk that Navi 48 was going to see a huge bump in ray tracing, and it made some rounds in a bunch of different websites. A couple of people were talking about it, but it really didn't. I think people were like, well, let's see what we see. Now now what we're hearing is that, whoa, these things actually are legit. We're hearing it from multiple different people. We're hearing it from multiple different sites. A lot of people are starting to say the exact same things. So what we're starting to hear is ray tracing on the next gen from AMD is going to be somewhere between a 4070 Super and a 4080. Now, not a 4080 Super. Let's make that really clear because the 4080 Super is quasi like 4090 territory.
Yeah, it's one of those in-between cards.
It is, but it gives us a really good idea of where ray tracing is going to be. But then, if we kind of understand rasterization wise, somewhere between an XTX and an XT on the prior gen, the XTX in some games will rival a 4090, but it's for sure going to be doing some real competition with the 4080 supers. And so that looks really interesting. Now, I know a lot of people are it's slower than the prior gen, and that's a little unique, but the pricing is where I think that we're really interested here. And the pricing is somewhere between, now it says $499 and $599.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably somewhere in the middle is where we'll actually see it. AMD still has graphics cards in general have not been moving. I don't know. The economy worldwide sort of sucks, and I think people are in general not super excited about big ticket purchases, which I think could probably be part of that. But if this is correct, if you can get a 4080, rasterization and a 4080 ray tracing at $499 or $550, this thing is going to be gangbusters.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, to the economy side, is that we're only a couple of years out of the pandemic, and about a year from where companies have started saying, "Oh, well, now you got to come back into the office." So the drive to upgrade people's home hardware really isn't there, and a lot of people did a huge amount of upgrading in 2021 and 2022, and a lot of these parts tend to last 3, 4, 5 years. So
unless you're an Intel processor, it lasts 6 months.
Right.
I had
without a BIOS update. That's deep cuts, man. Yeah, it's we're kind of in a point in in most people's refresh cycle where, unless they see a huge improvement over what they already have. So in my case, the 6900 XT that I for some reason keep calling a 6800, or you with your 6850 or 6950 XT, most people are not going to see a compelling need to upgrade for, I'd say, at least another year before prices start dropping, unless something big comes out. And the rumors are looking like the 6800 XT could potentially be, the 8800 XT could potentially be that breakout part that's like, hey, things have really improved, and if you like the shiny stuff and you're sticking with AMD, go here.
I think the one thing that I'm looking at here is that this is going to murder the first gen 4070, those 4070 pieces with 12 gigabytes where they're really kind of they're hamstrung.
Yeah.
3070, the prior generations where VRAM is becoming an issue, especially on the NVIDIA side.
Yep.
Because this will look like it's going to be 16 gigs of 20 gigabits per second, maybe 21. On
we're
that,
talking GDDR6X.
Yeah, GDDR6X. So really, from a performance perspective, that's going to be a really attractive piece. The ability to do 1440p, possibly getting into the 4K realm from a resolution from a gaming perspective. But then the other thing that I'm really interested in, and I'm going to be very interested when we actually start seeing stuff from AMD, is all of this going to get tied back to AMD's Fluid Motion 2? Because if we're having a bump in the ray tracing, does that mean that frame generation, the Fluid Motion 2, is also going to see a performance increase? And if it does, this is going to be a killer card, because the ability to lengthen this card out, and the notion is I don't have to have my developer to enable DLSS or frame generation. It is a driver level upgrade. And even if I can get 15, 20, 25%. That is a card that is going to give some really good gaming longevity. And at $499 or $550, that is going to be a killer price. Now, talking price. Okay, let's look at Micro Center. Okay, the competition that we have right now, a 4080 Super is at $950, $960. Okay, the 4070 Ti, which I would probably say is similar to the performance both on ray tracing and rasterization we're going to see, we expect to see with this card, is still $800. That's the cheapest one. They go up from there.
Yep.
So if this is $200 or $250 or even $150 cheaper, this is going to slot in very, very well. Now, the loaded question is on the AMD side, if I have a $499 or a $550 card, then the 7900 XT and the XTX are going to have a hard time selling. And the honest truth is if I can get equal performance and a ray tracing bump, the only positive thing of the XTX or the XT at that point is, 4 more gigs of RAM on the XT or, at 8 gigs on the XTX. That's an easy trade-off, given that I don't think this is going to be the same. I think it's going to be similar performance. And, right now these cards are looking, because it's that, enthusiast value gamer segment. I don't want to say it's in the value gamer. I don't want to say it's an enthusiast. I think this is right in the middle where it is. But if it's at 200, 250, 280 watts, if this thing overclocks, this thing is going to be so good.
Yeah. Well,
because if it's not using a ton of power, you're not going to have a ton of heat.
Right. Well, and if you think about it too, that with it looking like it's going to slot in between the 7900 XT and the XTX, that puts it in the class, or at least approaching the class of the 4090. So if you're getting close to that with rasterization performance and you're landing in that ballpark with ray tracing performance, that means you could potentially easily play 4K games, because that's what I do a lot of times. I put my 6900 XT up to my 4K TV, kick back on the couch and play Fortnite or, what have you. Now, granted, Fortnite's not the most graphically intensive game, but it plays Cyberpunk quite well at 4K, though I haven't yet played with FrameGen on Cyberpunk since that's come out. And I would be really curious to see how NVIDIA scrambles to respond to this, because, up to this point, they've really only announced one new 4070 card, and that's with slower memory. That's going down to GDDR6. And memory, as we know, is a killer in the mid-range cards. NVIDIA never puts enough. They really never have. And it
unless you're in China.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And it hampers performance so badly that, you're not able to use all of your card in some of these games because the games require 8, 10, 12 gigs of frame buffer just for their assets.
I mean, just look at the modders who are taking 2080 Ti's and going from 11 gigabytes to 22 gigabytes, and they're seeing double-digit percentage increases because, again, they actually have RAM that's the same speed, but now that you double the RAM, it's interesting. If you look at Steam survey, let's just look at the top 10 cards here real quick. 3060 value segment, 1650 budget segment for sure.
Yep.
3060 Ti is definitely the value segment. 3070 is kind of mainstream. 4060 value, 2060 value, 4060 laptop value. If it's not a 60 part, it's a 1650 or a 70 part, and top 10 is in this value segment.
Yep.
And you start looking at this and say, if I can get 4080 performance at let's say 550. Right now, let's take a look at Micro Center while we take, because I want to think that, right now on with both of these, you're probably looking at, I'm thinking probably even a 4060.
I mean, a 4060 Ti right now from PNY is going for $439. And cards in those class typically range between the $400 and $500 range. And, if you're in that budget range and AMD drops this card and it absolutely screams, you'd almost be dumb not to do it unless you were in a situation where you absolutely couldn't fork over the extra $100 to $150 to go literally up two full classes of cards, because you're going from 4060 performance to 4080, maybe 4090 performance in some scenarios.
I mean, the honest truth is that right now 4060 Ti is 520. Right now, I can buy it at Micro Center right down the street.
Yeah, Amazon has them on one day for $439 right now.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a 4070, the originals, vanilla 4070 with 6X, GDDR6X, by the way, for 540. But that's a sizable difference between the Ti Super and what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So really, it's really going to push this piece down for sure, because the 12 gigabytes is not enough. I don't understand why NVIDIA did it.
Yeah.
And the honest truth is that what does NVIDIA have coming out? Blackwell, we're hearing that Blackwell's got pushed back to 2025. We may not see that until CES next year. I don't think they have anything that they can come out with right now. And keep in mind, NVIDIA is being investigated for price fixing.
Price fixing and other monopolistic practices.
So,
but with that price fixing, just remember that if you buy more, you save more. Got to get Jensen his leather jackets, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the honest truth is that I really think the best thing about this that I saw here was, this is AMD going to get really aggressive, and I really think if these numbers are correct and they can get it out October, November before Christmas, this is going to sell a crap ton of graphics cards, and it's going to make AMD a lot of money. And at this point, this is what they need. They need wins. Now, the loaded question is what do they have coming up behind it? There's talks that Navi 48 may be a one-trick pony. We'll see how that looks. We may get another reiteration, maybe, a core bump. I don't know. The real question is this a cut down core of Navi 48 that we're going to get? Or is this the full beans? This is what we decided. This is what you get. Not really sure, but the notion is that with TSMC, they're able to crank these bad boys off, and this is it. When they launch this, I fully expect this to be wildly popular and wildly available.
Yeah, and I suspect that this could potentially be a cut down Navi 48, because normally when you do a launch like this, you don't launch your biggest and best right off the bat. I mean, look at what they're doing with the 9000 series. So it's possible that they decided to launch this card because they're having yield issues at the higher end and they're just not able to put out enough chips, but they are getting enough to validate that would fit the 8800 profile. Now, we won't know this until the cards actually launch, and they're actually supposed to be doing a presentation at Gamescom in the next, I think it's either later today or tomorrow.
We'll see.
They might talk about it, they might not, but we shall see, and hopefully we can see soon, because there is also talk of it potentially releasing a lot sooner rather than later, because initially AMD was saying that will probably be toward the end of Q4, but now it's potentially looking like it could happen sometime in Q3, maybe early Q4. So
I just think when it's all said and done, I think AMD is trying really hard to hold what they have available
yeah,
so that it does not come out before they're ready for it to come out.
yeah, they
And
don't
I
want
believe that that's
shortages.
it. But let's be honest here. Okay. Let's just from a pricing perspective again. Nobody, nobody in their right mind ever thought that Blackwell was going to be a sub $2,000 part. A 5090, the expectation was that was going to be a stupid expensive $2,000+ part.
Yep.
The 5080 was going to be in that same range. If you've got this at $499 and $599. I think the best use case here for AMD and for gamers. So let me rephrase that. The best case here for gamers is that the value proposition with this card is awesome.
Yeah.
And if this doesn't get for Nvidia off center of just raising prices time and time and time again, then nothing will. And what's going to eventually happen is that gamers are going to just go over to AMD because they're not going to be able to afford, to mortgage their arms and legs to buy a graphics card.
Yep.
Now, speaking of price, what this does is it completely kills Intel.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can get that performance at that price, Intel is absolutely screwed because they don't have the performance and their fab is expensive. They are in every which way, shape, or form. This is the last thing Intel needs.
Yeah.
Could this be the real like dagger that kills off ARC? I don't know if I would say that. I mean, Intel is a fairly proud group of companies, but I'm sorry, when they've got a bunch of problems, and I think GPU is obviously not going well for them. So something's going to change, and I don't know what that something is right now, but this, if you're an ARC lover and you think ARC is the best thing since sliced bread, this is the worst thing that you could hear.
Yeah.
AMD's going to release a mainstream value enthusiast card, sub $600, and it's going to force a pricing competition. Now, we'll see what NVIDIA has, and this might be a short-term victory for AMD. If they release in October, they can get October, November, December, January, February, March sales, and then before NVIDIA can respond, sales are sales. The load of, I think the question is I know we've heard that they've stopped making 40 series as they're getting ready to ramp up for Blackwell, but could this be a point where you will be able to buy a 4070 for sub, like for $300?
Potentially. The other side of the coin. Yeah, I mean, the other side of the coin really is, is NVIDIA going to be willing to actually compete on price like they really never have in the past? I mean, there have been some instances where they kind of have, but AMD's never really been a threat. And looking at this, at these rumors that we picked up, a lot of it from Broken Silicon, are looking like they could wind up being the Radeon version of Zen 1. And that's awesome if that's the case.
I do think one of the things that that I'm very interested to find out is, from an architecture perspective, it seems like that this ditches the chiplet design. Now, nobody knows, and we haven't heard really anything on that from a design perspective, but It will be. I am going to be very keen to when we find out if this is a chiplet design or if AMD has kind of looked at this and said chiplet was great with Ryzen, not so great with Radeon, or maybe it's we're going to shelve chiplets for now. We've got to work out some of these issues from from a design perspective, and maybe that comes out later. But look, that's it for now. We want to just keep it short and sweet to the point. At the bottom, hit like, subscribe, leave comments. We always will be looking at those comments. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I mean, I think we may hear something concrete in the next 7 to 10 days, if not maybe even on the sooner side. The minute that board partners really start getting some real numbers, I think we could easily see some of the stuff. And I think that the information that we're going to get out of this card very quickly is not, I think it's going to be it's like, it's leaks that they want out.
Yeah.
It's not leaks from like, hey, I saw something in the back room. It's going to be, hey, you can say this. And it's going to be people within board partners. And it might be AMD going to board partners and say, hey, I need you to leak. It's going to be this.
Could be.
I need you to leak. And I could very easily see this because at this point, AMD would be very smart to get a lot of kind of chatter about this and kind of get a lot of engagement. And it will be very, very interesting to see how all of this shakes off.
Yeah.
At $550. I mean, even if that's Moose, I might be interested at $550.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, a 6900, 6950 XT, it's a cascade down piece where I can pass mine pieces down.
Yep.
But if you can overclock that thing, ooh, that is going to be a glorious card, I think.
Well, and the last thought here, before we fully wrap it up, is if you remember back on the leaks on the 6000 series, AMD sandbagged those leaks. The parts were intentionally performing slower. Think about it. What if they're sandbagging Navi 48? What if the price is right, but it actually competes with a 4090 with less power? They actually do what they were talking about doing on the CPU side.
if and let's say that's a big if. I'm not sold that could be real.
No, it's a big what if.
Let's just say in Moose Land that you're right. This would completely disrupt. The honest truth is that had they been able to get a little bit more performance and maybe a little bit more wattage into this card, now I don't know, but if you could have, could you overclock this thing to a 4090? I don't know. A 4080 and a 4090 are pretty far apart, but if I'm starting at 4080, could I get 20% on overclock? Now that's a pretty hefty overclock.
Yep.
It will be interesting, but
if you got in between the 4080 and 4090 with an overclock, that's still, I mean, as it stands, it's a huge value proposition.
If the card is unlocked, like on mine, I have 3 8-pins on my 6950. And when I put it on water and I turned off and really pushed the card, and I was pulling upwards of 450 watts through the card, that thing was hot, but when I put it underwater, that thing was way faster.
Yep.
So, and that's the notion about the Radeon cards is as you give them more power and more, they typically will take it well. Now, will this be the same? Well, time will tell. But overclocking on these is going to possibly could you find a board manufacturer like Asus that comes out with a $700 version of this and says, oh, by the way, ours is comparable with a 4090.
Right.
that would be a very unique opportunity. Even if you paid $250 more, if the notion, the selling point was we beat a 4090, you would have a lot of gamers be like, yes. And I think it's really good because right now Radeon Software, I think, has made that Fluid Motion Frame Gen 2 is, I think, a really, really big selling point. I really hope that AMD does a really good job at pushing that narrative, because that really could make that an even better value segment. So on that note, we're going to get back and play some games, and so should you, after you like and subscribe.
Indeed. So on that note, have fun storming the castle. Good night, everybody.